Welcome, gents. Not everything needs a reaction. Silence, too, can be power. There comes a point in a man's life when he stops explaining himself. He no longer rushes to prove his worth or convince others to understand his way of thinking. That's not apathy, that's clarity. And if you've found yourself caring less and less about what people expect of you, there's a strong chance you're moving like a Sigma male. You're not detached because you're bitter. You're detached because peace became more important than pleasing people. You don't waste time in empty arguments. You don't seek attention, approval, or applause. You don't parade your choices to earn respect. You've quietly built a world that answers only to your values, and anyone who can't understand that is simply not part of your journey. This isn't coldness. It's a sharpened focus. You care deeply, just not about noise that distracts from your mission. You don't need a crowd. You don't need to be seen. You need truth, freedom, and space to grow without someone trying to box you in. If this sounds like you, you're not broken. You're just built differently. You don't move on command because your spirit answers to something deeper. And if that makes you hard to label or impossible to control, good. That's your edge. Keep it. You're not heartless. You're done wasting your heartbeat on things that don't matter. That's not weakness, that's mastery. So gents, let's dive deeper into 12 Sigma's careless. Number 1, you don't argue to win. You let people drown in their own delusions. There's a quiet kind of strength that comes when you stop trying to convince people of who you are. You don't argue to win anymore. You just observe. If someone wants to twist your words, misread your intentions, or spin their own version of the truth, you let them. You've learned that trying to pull people out of their delusions is a waste of energy, especially when they're more comfortable living in the lie. And this isn't about thinking you're better, it's about protecting your peace. You've seen how people argue not to understand but just to defend their ego. They don't want clarity, they want to be right. And you no longer take that bait. Think about it. How many times have you been in a conversation where you knew the other person wasn't listening, just waiting for their turn to talk? You could present facts, logic, even receipts, and they'd still look you dead in the eye and say, yeah, but I feel like... That's when it hits you. Their mind is made up. Let them keep it. A Sigma male knows that silence is not surrender, it's strategy. When people try to provoke you, they expect a reaction. But you're past that. You let them talk. You let them assume. You let them create whatever narrative helps them sleep at night. Because deep down, you already know who you are. And that kind of self-certainty, that's rare, that's power. So the next time someone pushes you to explain yourself, to argue, to fight for your name in their story, don't. Let them drown in their own version. Meanwhile, you keep walking. You've got better things to build than egos to fix. Real ones see you, the rest don't matter. Number 2, you've mastered the art of disappointing expectations without guilt. There's a quiet kind of freedom that comes when you stop trying to meet everyone's expectations. You've mastered the art of disappointing people, and not in a reckless or careless way. You just no longer feel guilty for choosing what actually makes sense for your life. People will always try to put you in a box. They'll hand you a script and expect you to read it perfectly. Be more like this. Talk less like that. Smile more. Follow this path. Pick that job. Settle down. Be available. Be easy to figure out. But a Sigma male doesn't play along. You don't lose sleep over being misunderstood or not meeting someone's vision of who they thought you should be. And when they finally realize you're not going to perform for them, it rattles them. You're not hostile, you're just clear. If they wanted someone they could control, they came to the wrong person. Maybe they expected you to call more often. Maybe they thought you'd care more about appearances or follow the usual steps everyone else does, but you didn't. You chose silence over small talk. You chose growth over gossip. You chose a path they don't understand. And when they say you've changed, what they really mean is you stopped being who I needed you to be for my comfort. Here's the truth. You're not cold. You're just done living on someone else's timeline. You're not here to act out a part in someone else's movie. You're writing your own script. And if that disappoints a few people, so be it. You're not obligated to shrink so others feel better. You're not here to keep everyone comfortable. You're here to live honestly, fully, on your own terms. And the more you do that, the more peaceful life becomes. You'll disappoint the wrong people, but you'll attract everything that's meant for the real you. That's not selfish, that's self-respect. Number 3, you see attention as a liability, not currency. Some people crave attention like it's oxygen. They'll do anything to be noticed, talked about, or praised. But for you, attention feels more like a weight than a reward. You don't chase it. You don't need it. In fact, too much of it starts to feel like noise that gets in the way of what really matters. You see attention as a liability. The more people are watching, the more they assume, the more they expect, and the more they judge. You've learned that the spotlight rarely brings peace. It usually brings opinions you never asked for and expectations you never agreed to carry. You don't move for applause. You move for purpose. You'd rather build quietly, work in the shadows, and let your results speak for themselves. You don't post every move. You don't need to prove your hustle. If people notice, fine. If they don't, that's fine too. You know what you're doing. That's enough. Think about it. While others are busy updating their lives for strangers online, you're busy upgrading your real life in private. You're not interested in being famous for nothing. You'd rather be respected by a few than praised by a crowd that doesn't even know you. And when the spotlight does land on you, it doesn't excite you. It makes you want to step back even more, not because you're shy, but because you understand that real value isn't loud. It's consistent, it's rooted, it doesn't need to be broadcasted to be real. So if you're someone who prefers action over noise, depth over display, and real over recognition, then you've already figured it out. Attention is cheap, but your peace, that's priceless. And that's the difference between you and most people. You're not hiding, you're just focused. And that kind of silence is louder than anything applause could ever give. Number 4, you're willing to be the villain in someone's story to remain the hero in your own. At some point, you realize that not everyone is going to like the real you. And when you stop pretending, stop shrinking, stop playing the version of yourself that keeps people comfortable, something strange happens. You become the villain in someone else's story. Not because you hurt them, not because you lied or betrayed, but simply because you stopped living for their approval. And that's a trade you're finally willing to make. Because being the hero in your own life means telling the truth, making tough choices, setting boundaries, and walking away when something no longer serves your peace. But to people who benefited from your silence, your compliance, your people-pleasing, that makes you the bad guy. You've learned to live with that. You'd rather lose a few relationships than lose yourself again. You'd rather be judged for being real than applauded for being fake, because you know the cost of wearing a mask every day. It drains you. It kills you slowly, and it keeps you locked in a life that doesn't feel like yours. Think about it. Maybe someone got upset because you stopped texting first. Maybe they accused you of changing because you finally said no. Or maybe they called you selfish because you stopped putting their needs ahead of your own. To them, that's betrayal. To you, that's growth. You're not going to beg to stay in someone's life when the price is your identity. That's not love, that's a transaction. And you're done making deals that leave you empty. So if you've lost people on the road to finding yourself, good, that means you're on the right path. You're not here to play a role in someone else's fantasy. You're here to live your truth. And if that truth makes you the villain in their version, so be it. At least you're finally the hero in your own. Number 5, you don't care to be followed because you're not leading anyone but yourself. Some people are obsessed with being leaders. They want followers, influence, titles, recognition. They want to be seen as the one in charge. But you've never cared for any of that. You're not trying to lead anyone. You're not asking to be followed. You're just doing your own thing, and that's more than enough for you. You've never needed a crowd behind you to feel important. In fact, the idea of people depending on your every move kind of makes you uncomfortable. Because deep down, you know this one truth. You're not here to guide others. You're here to guide yourself. That's your mission. You don't move for applause, you move for freedom. Your decisions aren't made to inspire, they're made to protect your peace. And if people happen to be inspired by that, cool. But that was never the goal. You don't wake up thinking, how can I lead? You wake up thinking, how can I stay true to myself today? And if the world doesn't get it, that's fine. You were never chasing their understanding anyway. Let others chase followers and titles. You'd rather have your solitude, your clarity, your independence. You're not against leadership, it just doesn't excite you. Not when it comes at the cost of your inner calm, not when it means playing a role to please a crowd. You're not here to be a role model, you're here to be real. And sometimes that means walking paths no one else is willing to walk, alone, quietly, with no audience and no expectations. So no, you don't care to be followed because you're not looking back, you're not checking who's watching, you're too focused on becoming the kind of man you can respect. That's not leadership in the traditional sense, that's something deeper, that's self-mastery. Number 6, you have zero interest in competing where the prize is attention. You know what turns you off the fastest? A room full of people trying to outshine each other just to feel seen. That whole game of who can be the loudest, who can dress the boldest, who can get the most likes, the most followers, the most fake praise, it does nothing for you. If that's the prize, you don't even want a seat at the table. You've got zero interest in performing for attention. Competing for surface-level validation doesn't excite you. It drains you. It's not that you can't win in those spaces, you could easily. But you've grown past needing to prove yourself in places where the metrics are shallow. Let others chase claps and camera flashes. You'd rather chase meaning. You're not afraid to be quiet when everyone else is loud. You're not intimidated by not being noticed. In fact, being unnoticed gives you room to think clearly, to move with intention, to stay in control. You've realized that some people will do anything to be seen, even if it means becoming someone they're not. But that's not you. You're not here to compete for likes. You're here to build a life that feels right, even if no one is watching. And when people try to pull you into that race, the constant showing off, the non-stop talking, the look at me energy, you just step back. You don't need to play games that were never designed for depth. Because at the end of the day, what you value can't be measured in applause. You measure your wins in peace, in purpose, in how honest you can be with yourself. And if that makes you invisible to the crowd, good. You weren't made to be loud. You were made to be solid. And that's something no spotlight can ever give you. Number 7, you don't flinch when someone pulls away. You barely notice they were there. You don't panic when someone pulls away from you. Truth is, half the time, you barely notice they were that close to begin with. That's not coldness, that's clarity. You don't overestimate people's place in your life, and you definitely don't chase anyone just because they decided to walk out. You've learned to let people go without begging, without fighting, without making a scene. If someone wants to leave, you don't block the exit, you open it wider. Because anyone who truly values you won't test your peace just to feel important. You've stopped holding people emotionally hostage. No guilt trips, no manipulative games. You love hard, but you love clean. If it's not mutual, it's not worth your time. If someone needs space, you give it, not as a trick to bring them back, but because you genuinely respect their right to choose something else. And when they leave, you don't crumble, you don't spiral, you keep moving because your identity was never built on someone else staying. Think about it. How many times have you seen people beg, plead, or shrink themselves just to keep someone around? You've been there, you've done that, and now you'd rather be alone than be in a room full of people who don't see you. You don't play the emotional tug of war anymore. If they let go, you let go faster, because peace isn't found in keeping people, it's found in not needing to. And while some might call it heartless, the truth is it's strength. It's knowing that your worth doesn't decrease when someone leaves, it stays the same. So if someone pulls away, let them. You're not here to convince anyone to stay. You're here to build with people who choose you without hesitation. Everyone else? Safe travels. Number 8, you only reveal 10% of what you know because being underestimated is a weapon. You've learned something most people never figure out. Power doesn't always need to be seen. You don't show all your cards. You don't feel the urge to speak just to prove how much you know. In fact, you only reveal about 10%. And that's not insecurity, that's intention. People think silence means you have nothing to say, but you let them believe that. You let them assume you're just quiet, maybe even a little slow to catch on. What they don't realize is that you're already 10 moves ahead, you're just not broadcasting it. Being underestimated is one of your greatest weapons. It keeps people comfortable, it keeps them sloppy, and that gives you room to observe, adjust, and strike when it actually matters. While they're talking, you're studying. While they're showing off, you're strategizing. You understand the value of silence. You're not quiet because you're shy. You're quiet because you're focused. Your silence isn't empty, it's loaded with intention, with awareness, with things you've seen, figured out, and kept to yourself. You don't speak unless the words are necessary, unless they move the mission. You don't waste breath trying to prove intelligence or show off experience. That kind of energy is better spent building something real. Because when you finally speak, people listen, not because you're loud, but because you're deliberate. You've trained yourself to be selective, not silent, and that's the difference. In a world full of noise and oversharing, your discipline stands out. You're not hiding. You're calculating. You know when to show your hand, and more importantly, you know when to hold it. So let them keep guessing. You don't need the room to know what you know. You just need the results to speak louder than any explanation ever could. Number 9, you're unbothered by rejection because you've already accepted yourself fully. Rejection doesn't shake you anymore. Not because you've stopped caring, but because you've stopped needing permission to exist. You've already accepted yourself fully, the flaws, the quirks, the strengths, the shadows, all of it. You no longer sit around waiting for someone to choose you. That phase of life is over. You picked yourself a long time ago, and ever since you've moved like someone who doesn't need to be rescued, validated, or stamped with approval. There was a time when rejection stung. Maybe it was being overlooked, not getting that call back, being ghosted, left out, or passed over. Back then it used to hit hard, but now you take it in stride. If someone doesn't see your value, that's on them. You don't argue, you don't convince, you don't shrink to fit. Because when you're solid with yourself, other people's opinions feel small. You've already done the hard work of facing your insecurities, questioning your worth, and deciding you were enough. Anyone who comes along now is just extra, not essential. You've seen people twist themselves into knots just to be chosen. You've seen them lower their standards, lose their identity, all for the chance to be accepted. You've been there too, and that's exactly why you'll never go back. You're not for everyone, and that's the point. You weren't meant to be. You're not chasing popularity. You're chasing peace. And if someone rejects you, it doesn't mean you lost. It means you were never meant to carry them with you. So let them pass. Let them walk away. Let the door close. You've already chosen you. You've already decided that your value doesn't rise and fall based on who stays. You're not looking to be picked. You're too busy building something real, with or without applause. Number 10, you don't engage in pointless debates because your energy is a sacred currency. You've reached a point where your energy is no longer up for grabs. You don't hand it out to every opinion, every insult, or every invitation to argue. You've learned that not every conversation deserves your voice, especially the ones that go nowhere. You don't engage in pointless debates because your energy is sacred. You've got goals to chase, peace to protect, and time that doesn't come back. Wasting it on conversations that only drain you, that's not strength, that's self-sabotage, and you're done doing that. You can spot it instantly. When a conversation is already dead before it begins, when the other person isn't listening to understand, just waiting to clap back. When they're more interested in being right than being real. You don't fight those battles, you withdraw, not because you're scared of conflict, but because the entire interaction is beneath your frequency. You don't owe everyone a response. You don't need to educate the willfully ignorant. You don't have to correct every loud opinion thrown in your direction. That's emotional maturity. That's wisdom. That's power. Some people argue just to feel important, but you've got nothing to prove. You don't fight for dominance in conversations that lack substance. You save your voice for where it matters and when it doesn't. You choose silence without guilt. It's not that you're passive, you're precise. You know how valuable your inner peace is and you protect it like your life depends on it, because it does. So when the next shallow debate comes around or someone tries to bait you into proving a point, you stay still, you stay quiet, you stay focused, because you know your energy isn't free. And you're only spending it on people and conversations that are worth the cost. Everything else, let it talk to itself. Number 11, you cut ties without the need for betrayal. Disrespect is enough. You don't need a big dramatic betrayal to walk away from someone. You don't need to catch lies, hear rumors, or see some grand act of disloyalty. For you, it's way simpler than that. If someone starts to disturb your frequency, even just a little, that's enough. You've reached a place where your peace matters more than the length of the relationship, more than shared history, more than trying to fix what clearly doesn't feel right anymore. You don't wait for chaos. You don't wait to be broken to finally choose yourself. One sign of subtle disrespect and you're already halfway out the door. It could be a shift in how they speak to you, a tone that feels off, a look that says, I don't value you like I used to. Or maybe it's just a feeling, something deep in your gut that whispers, this is no longer safe for your spirit. And you listen to that voice every time. You've learned that not all damage comes in loud explosions. Sometimes it shows up in small, careless moments. And those moments add up. So rather than let it grow, you choose to walk early. Quiet, clean, and without apology. People might not understand it. They might say you're cold, that you're cutting people off too fast. But what they don't see is the years it took you to finally protect your boundaries without guilt. They don't understand how many times you stayed too long in the past, hoping someone would change, only to lose parts of yourself in the process. Now, you don't stay for potential. You stay for alignment. And if that disappears, so do you. You don't hold grudges. You don't start drama, you just remove access. Because your peace doesn't beg, and your soul isn't up for negotiation. You don't need betrayal to leave. Disrespect is more than enough. Number 12, you show love in quiet, inconvenient ways. And if it's not seen, you're still fine. You're not the loudest when it comes to love. You don't do grand speeches or public displays just to prove you care. Your love isn't always visible, but it's real, consistent, and carved into the small, quiet things you do without being asked. You show love in inconvenient ways, the things nobody notices. Checking in when no one else does, fixing problems before they're spoken out loud, remembering the small details people forgot they even told you, protecting someone's name when they're not in the room, showing up, not with words, but with presence. And the truth is, most people miss it, because your love doesn't scream, it whispers. It works behind the scenes. It holds everything steady without asking for applause. And if it goes unseen, you don't complain. You don't start performing just to be recognized. You know the difference between doing something for love and doing something to be praised. Your loyalty runs deep. It doesn't flicker when things get hard. You'll go through the fire for someone you care about. But the moment you feel like your presence is being taken for granted or your quiet efforts are treated like obligations, you pull back. Not out of anger, but out of self-respect. You don't need to post your affection. You don't need to be thanked with a spotlight. You just need your love to be met with awareness, not noise. And if someone never sees it, that's okay too, because your love doesn't depend on being noticed. It's rooted in who you are. It's calm, steady, strong, and even when it's invisible to others, it still stands. Because for you, love isn't about credit. It's about showing up, even when no one's watching. And that kind of love, rare and real. In final words, when you know who you are, silence becomes your loudest answer. Being a Sigma male who couldn't care less isn't about being cold. It's not about shutting down or giving up on people. It's about growing so rooted in your identity that you no longer need the world to clap for you in order to move forward. You've seen enough. You've been through enough. And now you choose peace over performance, depth over noise, truth over validation. You're not driven by popularity. You don't chase approval. You don't mold yourself to fit into systems that were never designed for men like you. And the reason people often misunderstand you is because you don't follow the rules they're used to. You're not predictable. You don't explain every step. You move with intention and let the results do the talking. That's not carelessness. That's clarity. You couldn't care less about being liked because you've already made peace with who you are. You couldn't care less about competition because your only focus is becoming better than who you were yesterday. And you couldn't care less about being chosen because you already chose yourself. And that was the real breakthrough. You are not here to impress. You're here to live honestly, to walk away when peace is threatened, to stay silent when the world gets loud, to stand firm in a room full of masks, wearing none. If you resonate with this, understand this truth. You're not broken. You're built differently. The way you move may confuse the crowd, but it speaks loudly to those who move like you. Stay true, stay solid, and never forget. Not caring about the wrong things is exactly what allows you to focus on what really matters. That is your edge, that is your freedom. Thank you for watching, gents, and God bless you.